I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you. JB Cherian, this is chairman of Nestle, Mr. Suresh Narayanan.
Of course. Yeah, I've seen you in many programs and on TV and also read about you in the media.
Thank you. I shall not solicit any comments more than that. So that's.
Start, I think.
Hi, Bhaskar. I think, yeah, we have quite a 6:32. Okay.
Raji and Prasad and all have not come, no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see the.
Oh, the kids must be holding them back, I think. For the benefit of the others who are not in Arbors, today being Halloween, all our children are out there pretending to be monsters and
okay,
demanding chocolates from regular households. They've gone trick or treating.
Shall we begin then? I think, yeah, Prasad's also joined us. Hi, Prasad.
Hi, Shibu.
Okay. All right. Let's get going so that we can. So welcome everybody. I think we've got an interesting evening ahead of us, and to start off, we have this interesting talk by Cibi. Before that, I'll ask Mr. Muthuraman to start off the introductions because we got to know about him through him. So, Muthu sir, over to you.
Yeah, we have three guests today, JB Cherian, Mamita Sen, and Cibi Raj Singaravelu. I'll just introduce JB Cherian. Cherian is a good friend of mine. He used to be a very senior head in the IBM India organization. He left all that and he's full-time with the Isha Foundation and trying to help them to set up a unique leadership academy in Bangalore. Over to you, JB.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir. So my role here is just to introduce Cibi and I'll feed off. So I think Muthuraman sir might have sent you an introduction about Cibi, so I won't read the entire thing. But he's an astrophysicist by training and a history buff by passion. So somewhere along the line, history caught his passion, and he wanted to find a way of how does he bring the glorious past of India to our students, to the youth of India. And therefore, he started a project called the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Indian History that starts from the prehistoric times down to about 600 AD. It's about 350 pages of colorful, very realistic, high-quality illustrations of 20 different topics. And this is when our paths crossed. I'm setting up the Leadership Academy, and history is one of our core parts of the curriculum. Where it's integrated into the business domain subject. So Cibi then moved on to the Isha Leadership Academy team, and he's helping us put together the curriculum for the history part of it. And as he's been developing it, we've been reaching out to specific audiences to get feedback in the work that he has completed so far. So I will speak about it. But one of the things that that is very valued in Isha is commitment over competence. That's not to say that competence is not important, but if you have the commitment, then you will find the necessary expertise to do what you're doing. So similarly, in Cibi's case, even though not a historian by training, he is mentored by a number of very prominent historians. Chief among them being Harikaran, who's the founder of the Indic Academy. Pramod Kumar, the founder of Mind Makers, a US forum that supports scholars and academics researching various domains in Indic civilization. Professor Dr. Shankar Narayan, scholar of Sanskrit and Tamil Indian history. Professor Michael Denino, who's a renowned scholar in Indian history. And Professor Dr. Chitra Madhavan, who's also an expert in Indian temple architecture and history. So with that, I'll turn it over to Cibi. Everything that you're seeing here is part of what Cibi and the team at the ashram has been doing over the past 15 months or so. Cibi, over to you.
Thank you, Anna. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Namaskaram all. So I welcome you all for my presentation on India's heritage and how to bring it to the world children and youth. Bharatiya Samskriti, our Indian civilization, and her contribution to the world is both multifaceted and profound. No less than Albert Einstein has went out to say that the most significant scientific advancements that has happened in the world would not have happened without the mathematical basis from India. So on that basis, we will look at what I have done in the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Indian History with my story of how it has evolved and what we are doing in Isha as part of Isha Leadership Academy. So I will explain you the visuals and the paintings and the illustrations that we have created and the impact of our projects that we are doing and our plans. So Mark Twain went on to say that anything that has ever been created by either by man or by God has been done in India. And he said, our most valuable and most constructive materials in the history of humankind are treasured up only in India. So many people, even including a Chinese diplomat, Hu Shi, in the early 1950s, has said that India conquered and dominated China culturally for more than 20 centuries without ever having to send a single soldier across their border. So from the ancient to the contemporary, people across the world, the scholars, the learned, the noble, have always appreciated and looked upon the Indian civilization to teach them, to imbibe into it, to learn from them, to transform their lives. How old do you think the Indian civilization is? If you could look in the left, you could see the Shivalingas from more than 6,000 years ago from the Bronze Age city of Kalibangan on the banks of River Indus. You can also see the swastika symbol, unfortunately misappropriated with the Hitler's Kreuz, but the symbol of swastika has always been seen as a symbol of prosperity for more than 6,000 years in India. I am living in yoga center and Sadhguru keeps speaking about mukti and nirvana and samadhi and so on. Look at the image down below. What do you see? This is a yogi who attained Mahasamadhi in the sitting posture. Mahasamadhi for laymen is the highest aspiration for any yogi in the Indian tradition, that is to leave the body consciously. I don't want to go into the details of it, but look at the mastery over the human self that the Indians have shown 3,000 years ago. That's from the Archaeological Survey of India. All of these are from the Archaeological Survey of India. Next, you're seeing a temple in the left, and next to the temple there is a deer or a fawn. So this is from 400 BCE, excavated from Punjab. So we have this temple worshipping and the temple culture from those times, nearly 2,400 years ago. Sadhguru has spoken a lot about the science of temple building and the science of establishing the murtis or the deities over there. When we speak of deities, we cannot ignore Buddha, right? So until the arrival of Greeks into India, we never had a physical representation of Buddha in forms of an image. Buddha has always been represented either by the Bodhi Vriksha in the sculptures or by the asana, the seat where Buddha had sat upon. So this is one of its kind in those times, maybe around 100 BC or a little later, that Buddha has been represented in the Greek costumes, in the Greek traditions from the Gandhara dynasty. Gandhara is present-day Afghanistan, where the Indo-Greek Buddhist kingdoms were ruling, and they all have been, become vegetarians and meditators, and Buddhism has spread far and wide from Turkey to Philippines. So this is from those periods. Next, I want you to look at this temple, which is far, far away from the Indian mainland. This is in Bali. I assume many of you would have visited Bali. This is a Saraswati temple. So in the ashram, we are still in the fever of the Navaratri Puja, and the Saraswati and the Devi, the Divine Feminine, is still being celebrated in 21st century in India. And in ashram, it is such an extravagant festival here. So this is Saraswati temple from Bali, probably from the 11th, 12th century. And this is the Saraswati sculpture from Bali. You can see the children who are studying over there. And next is the Indonesian Gajalakshmi. Either it's Cambodian Gajalakshmi from the Angkor Wat temple. Lakshmi is one of the oldest deities of Indian civilization. From at least from 6,000 years ago, we have from the Rig Veda, the Shri Shuktam. It is still being recited in Indian household even today. So the legacy of Indian civilization is both old and also contemporary and also widespread. Then to the far east, that is a Saraswati Murti from Japan. Even though the locals call them as Bensaitan, the scholars and even most of the learned commoners would know that that image has come from India somewhere around 6th to 8th centuries. And I can show on many, many examples like this, how Indian civilization, Indian thought, Indian spirit and ethos, the spirituality, the tantra, meditation, and all of these things have reached from Turkey and even some areas into Mediterranean and as east as Japan and Korea. And that is one of my favorite images of Mahishasura Mardini. We have just celebrated a few days ago, the Durga Puja. That's not an Indian Devi, mind you, that is from Java. That's from 9th century for that matter. And this image, this is Shiva, and pay more attention to the image here. That is Mother Karekal Ammayar. She is the pioneer of the Bhakti movement of India in the 4th century. Okay, imagine a housewife of 4th century from a rich merchant house, abandoned her house and she wanted to devote her life in the spiritual path, got boon from Shiva so that she would become a wandering mendicant. She reached all the way up to Kailash, and the tradition says that Shiva has accepted her as his own mother. So this has happened somewhere in the eastern Tamil Nadu, and this is the basis of the Tamil Shaiva Siddhanta and the Kashmiri Shaivism, and basically the Bhakti movement of the past 1,700 years. She, because of the trade contact between the Chola kings and the far eastern kingdoms like the Khmer and the Majapahit empires, she has been much, much venerated and celebrated even in Cambodia. And this image, the bit down below, is the Chola contemporary of 9th century, Karekal Ammayar. The Tamil-speaking people would very much know her and her significance in the Tamil culture. So why history? See, for the past many thousands of years, India has always been leading humanity. India has been scientifically advanced, has always been knowledge exporters, has always contributed to the progress of human civilization in a very positive way. Look at the minimalistic lifestyle, yoga, vegetarianism, and basically the conscious living which Sadhguru keeps speaking about. But what happened is around some 700, 800 years ago, we had invasions, unfortunately, and because of that, our culture became a bit static. And later on, it ended up in colonization from the British people and from the rest of the Europeans. And unfortunately, we have become so colonized that we have forgotten our own past. So what's the problem if you forget our own past? See, a culture or a nation is just an idea. It's not a God-given thing. Only when we put our hearts into it, this burns into our mind, and this goes deep into our soul. Then we will think about how to preserve it, how to protect it, how to keep it clean, and so on, right? And if we can make India like that, which is already 1/6 of humanity, why can't we imagine a more joyful, a peaceful world? And India has always done that. We have testimonials throughout the Indian history to do that. Look at the image. That is called Milinda Pandha, the conversion of Meander king. He's a Greek king in those times, which is around 200 BCE. And he has been converted to the path of Buddhism, to the path of meditation by a Buddhist saint called Nagasena. And another image down below is, that's a drawing by somebody from the internet, but that's significant. That shows the Heliodorus. Heliodorus was a resident of Takshashila. Takshashila is in modern day Pakistan. He came to India, and then obviously he fell in love with the Indian culture and traditions. And in those times, you should imagine this is happening in 200 BCE. Then he built a temple for Vishnu. You can see the Bhagavan Vishnu from those times. Even the artist has made the Shankhu and the Chakra very, very, very perfectly. And he has also erected a pillar. And in the pillar, you can see the inscription. So the inscription is in Brahmi script. That says that I, Heliodorus, a resident of Takshila, and the Parama Bhagavata. Bhagavatas are the Vaishnava devotees who has dedicated their life and their soul to Bhagavan Vishnu. And then he went on to propagating this idea called, the vegetarianism, meditation, puja, more conscious living, more likely what modern day Hare Krishna people are doing across the world. Good or bad, it is bringing a positive impact across the world. If we can see that in Berlin, in Russia, and the US, right? So that is the greatness of Indian civilization, and this is why we need to teach the Indian history and culture for ourselves, and also for Indian youth and children, and not just for ours. We need to spread what India has always offered to the world, to the Western children and the Western youth, who would become the cultural ambassadors for India and their country, who would become policymakers and diplomats in their country, which would make a positive impact about India in the rest of the cultures. So, with this in mind, somewhere around 2018, some weird thought came in mind. I think it was a nice summer day, and I just had completed my visa process, and suddenly something happened to me, and I decided that I would be writing a book for Indian children. So I have been looking something that would show Indian history in visuals, but what I found was something like this, which is already unappealing. They call it as illustrations, but unfortunately, that's very drawing and basic, and that doesn't say anything about India. So the one image is more like Ashoka speaking to a goat or something like that. That's this is very, very unappealing. So I decided that, can't we be able to do even this? It doesn't require a big scholarly idea, right? You just have to read the history book and convert it into visuals. Quite simple, right? But then that costed all my weekends and my evenings, and I decided at one point to quit my job and came to India. I was an astrophysicist in Germany, and I was aspiring for a dual PhD in University of Washington. But then I had to stop all of these things because this went into my mind so much that I could not come away from it. So I started a crowdfunded project, and what resulted is the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Indian History in 4 volumes. If you look at the Western history books for children, it looks more like this. This is an UK-based publishing company, which is Usborne. Look at their illustrations. Look at the question that they are asking. Why was the Roman army so strong? Even though much before Rome, the Greek army could not penetrate into India because they had faced severe repulsions from the Magadha Empire, which was in the mainland India, and Alexander and other people could not invade much into India. But look at the cultural pride and the sense of superiority that they are instilling in their children. We cannot judge all of these things, but what are we doing to instill this pride into our children? Look at their baths. Look at the painting. There's an isometric projections. And look at their theaters. India had great theaters. Even texts like Kama Sutra are speaking in great detail about how to construct a theater and what was there, that would reflect Indian aesthetics. The drama, the way of constructing the theaters, the rasa, many things. But nobody has ever seen an Indian theater, right? And ancient Roman port, you can see the ships and everything. In an ancient Roman city, you can see the Colosseum here, a perfectly planned city and everything. But much before Rome and Greece and Egypt, India has created even more wonderful, uniquely planned cities with advanced civil engineering knowledges. But where are they? Yes, those are all in the wonderful history books, which nobody cares. Those are all in the heritage libraries. But why aren't we showing all of these things to our children? Why should we prevent our children from knowing our heritage and glory? That's when I started this thing. Those are all from the internet, but I'm just giving you an idea about how ancient India looked like and what I am achieving, what I'm aiming to achieve. That's a placeholder, but the goal is to create more than 350 pages of colorful illustrations that shows everything about ancient India, from irrigation to agriculture to schoolings and universities and shipbuilding, mechanical engineering, in more than 20 topics. And this being the first volume, that's about the classical India, the real India, you know, the Megasthenes and Arian and Strabo and Pliny and all those people had come and saw the wonder that was called as India. I'm planning to present that first and then planning to move on for the early medieval and the late medieval Indian times. I had an artist, and that's a self-portrait, and he has won many awards, and therefore art has become very costly these days, unfortunately. And mind you, this is a painting. You know, do you see this? One is the original statue, and one is a painting. Those are all the cloth that he has imagined visually, and then he has painted all of these things. This is a painting. This is a sculpture. There's a bronze image of Rama from Tamil temple. And so that is a skill. So I have hired him, and we have started with the hairstyles in ancient Indian art. What we have is research texts with boring art, something like this, and we have some broken sculptures. So the job is to put together all of this and to impress our children and you. See how I have done it. Yeah. So we have put this sculpture on the hairstyles from the research books like this. And then we have, once I am okay with the sketch that my artist has made, and we have created something like this. This hairstyle we can see from the central India of 200 BCE, from the Shunga art. Shunga people, they followed immediately after, you know, the Mauryan Empire, after Ashoka the Great. So like this, I have created a dozen. This is still there in South India, and this has become like this. So each of them is extremely historically accurate, including the bangles and the earrings and the clothings and so on. This is from Bengal. These things aren't available even in textbooks, in our school textbooks. These are still in the research papers. I have dug enough, and then I have taken all of these things and look at the hairstyles and the earrings and so on. So we are including all of these things in our book so that our children should get impressed with our hairstyles and the costumes. So our sketches, and yeah, each of the little bit image, each little bit pixel image that you are seeing is all historically accurate. The hairstyles and the jewelry and so on. We have enough references to show all of this, including the bindis, because obviously somebody would come up, where did you find all those bindis from? Yes, we have evidences for it. A sample page of my book would look something like this. Why we have done hairstyles and costumes? Because every chapter you would have the humans in the foreground and the buildings at the background. Now, even if it's about tax system in ancient India, you would still have to show the tax office, right? Just like modern day, how it's happening. In those times, the tax and the administration was so advanced that much Greek and the Chinese historians have written about that. Same way, yeah, the bindi I have said, all those Tripundra and the Urdhvapundra, Tilakam and so on. So these are all from the costume research books and from the sculptures, and they have become like this. So our great grandfather would have looked at something like this. This is super historically accurate, including the armbands and the bracelets and so on. And this is in Tamil. I have given input to my artist, something like this. And our great grandmother would have looked at something like this. She also wearing a Mangala Sutra, and she has this scarf like turban, and she is wearing the gunguru or the anklets and the bangles made of shells. So these represent a typical elite or the upper middle class society that would represent the typical nature of ancient India, the richness. So yeah. The goal is to transport our children and youth to those periods through these paintings and make them captivated. But yeah, unfortunately, art is costly, and we need to invest more. So I made a calculation, and I spoke with many artists of both Europe and US, and also compared with the Indian prices. So if we want to make, one page costs, unfortunately, 700 euros or 800 USDs. This is more like standard one. And my artist is quoting like 18,000. I spoke with a few other artists, and if you want quality, and we need to pay the price. And my aim is to make it 350 pages, and that requires nearly 65 lakhs. But then that money is less than 1/3 of what we had to pay for the European and the American artists. Why I have compared this American and the Europe artists? Because I was living in Germany, so I spoke with other artists. I went to the studio and spoke with them, and I called a few American artists, and this is what the quote that they have given. Well, the impact of the book is, we can have more and more books on India, which are first of its kind. Even though the great publishers like the Macmillan and Kingfisher, they have published wonderful civilization series. They have included Mayan, Inca, Chinese, and so on. But no India always, as if India has never existed. That kind of bit bothered me because I studied more about India while in Germany rather than I had known about Germany itself. Well, we can make more history videos and documentaries. The internet is filled with the Western narrative of Indian history and also about Western histories. There is nothing to show about the grandness and the glory that India had always offered to the world. And then that could become games and movies. And my dream is to make it into a heritage museum, which Sadhguru is also speaking about. I don't know, but I'm still interested in doing this. Okay. And then I ended up in Isha Leadership Academy quite accidentally. Now, these illustrations and paintings are going on to a next level. We are converting all this research texts and journals into slides and obviously illustrations, but we are not going to stop there. We are going to make it into videos. Then I decided to get into virtual reality. Well, virtual reality is still a new thing, and but to employ that in schools and universities, some schools in the US, they have done it. But I think instead of boring our children and the youth that are going to come to the Isha Leadership Academy, who are going to become the leaders of India, who are going to become the cultural ambassadors of this civilization and this culture. So if you want to make them inspired and get them imbibed into what India and the Samskriti, the civilization stands for, we need to impress them with virtual reality. We need to make them time travel to those periods and get them immersed in the streets of Takshashila and Kanchi and Avanti and Puhat. So I'll show you how would an ancient Indian village look like and what we have done in terms of paintings and illustrations. The cities and the city gates and the streets and the grand buildings of Patliputra and Takshashila and Vikramshila. These are all Iron Age Indian cities that made Rome and Athens look tiny. No, it is literally tiny because Patliputra is more than 2.5 times bigger than Rome. So a village. Now I will take you through this wonderful journey of an ancient Indian village where you can find a temple in the middle and surrounded by the matas or the shopping areas or the monasteries and the inns, surrounded by the living quarters and the offices, surrounded by the village boundary. Now you can compare this with the modern day Indian village. Unfortunately, after the British period, what we have is more mushroomed villages and mushroom cities due to overpopulation and centralized planning of Indian cities. But then how did an ancient Indian city look like? Did it always look this unorganized? We are saying that India is more an organized chaos. But was it always like that? Have you ever wondered? Look at this. Even to plan an Indian village, we have very detailed and meticulous information in terms of measurements and surveying and planning and which kind of people would go and which part of the village or for the city has always been laid out in the Agam Shastras and the Shilpa Shastras. Those texts are ancient Indian manuals or that deals with civil engineering, architecture, and sit town planning. So we have created 1/4 of the village. Now you can see the temple that was in the center, surrounded by the mutts and some buildings and the official buildings, surrounded by the temple, surrounded by the village complex made of stones or by bricks and surrounded by moats. So the entire Indian village, Megasthenes is saying that the entire Indian landscape has been dotted with countless and many thousands of villages and many thousands of cities. And the archaeological excavations are showing more such cities in the city gates. Now we look at the city gate in Iron Age India. So this is from Sanchi. Sanchi is in central India, that's in Madhya Pradesh. I assume some of you would have seen that. So here, king is coming out. These are all the depictions of the Jataka tales, because Sanchi being a Buddhist place. And this is from Patliputra. This is from Encyclopedia of Indian Architecture. A typical Indian city gate would look something like this. So imagine now you have got transported and you are standing in front of the majestic city gates of Patliputra. Those are made of hot stones and filled with ramparts and holes where they can throw arrows at the enemies. And that is also supported with a mechanical bridge. No, bridge doesn't mean those tiny little things that you're seeing. No, these are like highway kind of stuff, and that would carry multiple elephants at the same time. You also have those office buildings where the customs and the tax officers would go on to do their duties. They would check the immigrants. And further in, you can see all those multi-story buildings and the mansions, the prasadas and the bhavanas. So all the time, the painters would show ancient India means somewhat, bit a village and rustic and nobody lives there. No, it was not like that. Ancient India had metropolitan cities and cosmopolis. So, for example, Madurai or Kanchi or Puhar were like the New York and San Francisco of those times. A planning of city gate would look something like this. You have the top view and the layout of this from our research text that I have gathered. And then we have created in the architectural SketchUp. These are all just our exercise to see how far we can achieve in bringing some sort of realism. So we have improved bit by bit, and then I'm going to show you Indian cities. Nowadays, the British have come and occupied the Calcutta, then Mumbai, and later on to Madras and Delhi. Later on, it has become more mushroomed, and we don't really see the layout of Indian cities. But here, you can see a Bronze Age city like this from Dholavira. Dholavira is in Gujarat, which is more than 4,500 years ago. Look at the neatly planned city. Look at the water that has been channeled in to receive the ships from far-off lands like Arabia. Look at the water reservoir mechanism that the civil engineers of ancient Indians have created. This city has survived in the arid desert for more than 700 years. Can you believe that? Even the modern day Indian cities are still struggling with water shortages, but the meticulousness of Indian planning has resulted in such great cities. And the layouts of bit later times Iron Age cities would look something like this. So the one I have shown you is a Bronze Age city. Bronze Age is the period when Indians discovered bronze like 6,000 years ago or before. And later on time, around 3,200 years ago, Indians discovered iron. India is the place where iron got discovered, at least in South India. So this is my layout of ancient Indian Tamil city, which is in South India. This is called Pumpuhar, that got submerged by 2nd century CE. You can see the port in the far right, where ships from far off places would come and dock themselves, and exchange of goods would happen. You have in the far left, you have the elite city where the rulers would be there. The doctors, astrologers, Brahmins, and the jewelers, and you have the palace complex here. You have the commoners places here, including their temples and the shops and everything. You also have a shopping complex in between. I will come to that later. And this is Madurai. Madurai has always been a circular city. So Madurai has been described in the literature as the lotus that has bloomed from Bhagavan Vishnu's navel. There is a lotus that is coming from Vishnu's navel, and Brahma would be sitting. So that is the description of Madurai in the literature, and I have just made a simple sketch to show how it looked like. You still have the central palace and the temple complex surrounded by wall and moat. Surrounded by, you have the elite city, the upper city, the citadel. This is more like the layout of Indian city. You always have a central complex surrounded by the citadel and surrounded by the common people. And you also have small, villages and smaller settlements which don't go into the city. You also have, you see the river Vaigai, and there is also a small harbor, because ships that could not come into the river, they would transport their boats to smaller boats and would come here. So these images we have obtained from the Shilpa Shastras. So Indian cities were not always boring, square and rectangle and so on. We have many beautiful cities like this, the Padmaka, Nandyavata, and so on. The streets. So the market square that we have seen in the Pumpuhar, the city of Pumpuhar, where many temples and many kinds of people that have lived. This is the market square of that city, where you have the Bhutam, that is the guardian deity according to the literature. You have the people. You also had not just Indians. You had people from Arab world and the Mediterranean world, the traders and the scholars and everybody. Because you need to imagine the India of the past. That was not like the knowledge imported like today. You see, I went to Germany to learn astrophysics. But in those times, people had come to India because India had more than 30 universities. Probably India is the only civilization that has offered advanced higher studies in many different fields. Nalanda, everybody would know, but there were also other universities which housed more than 10,000 students at a time. That is a bird's eye view of an Indian city. You have houses and the building complexes. This is a Goshala. Every morning the village, the city people would take their goats outside the city gate to the villages to graze them and bring them back. And this again a temple. This is a Bodhigriha. I will come to the Bodhigriha a bit later. And this is an arena. This is a stadium. People could sit around and watch it. And this is a temple pond or a pool where people can take water. So this is even more zoomed view between the upper and the lower city. This wall separates the upper city. This is some sort of a lower city. You can see the vaulted ceilings and the balconies. The balconies are called as Chandra Shalas. Chandra is the moon and the Shalas are the ceiling. So balconies are those places where the moon itself is the ceiling. Imagine the text of Kama Sutra that says the couple would sit there and enjoy the moonlight and share their love. And this is a market street in ancient India. You have the retail market that's going on. There's a jeweler, there's a merchant. Look at the nice, neatly paved roads. Roads were not just within the city. We had the Silk routes. Now it's called as Grand Trunk Road that has connected India from both this and China and that end into the Mediterranean. And this merchant is taking his goods to the warehouse where that will be sold. That will be taken outside to Egypt and Alexandria and Athens and Pompeii for outside trade. So Bodhigriha. So this is one of our pet projects. And around the Bodhi tree, after Buddha has attained Nirvana after 300 years ago, King Ashoka has built this hexagonal complex around the Bodhi tree. And this is a layout. And that's a near realistic illustration of us we have done through SketchUp. Then temples. This is a temple from 10th, 11th century. Even though the proportions are just the same from 5,000 years ago, yes, do you know that even today the temples are constructed in the same proportions that has been used in the Indus Valley times. And just the facades and the elevations and the ceiling that has been altered for the 10th century taste, but the proportions were always the same. And even more the zoomed in view. And now we are conducting a virtual reality laboratory so that they would help us in creating even more nicer, realistic ones. These are just our exercises that have been done in the past months. This is another temple from 4th century BCE. Patanjali Maharishi, the father of modern yoga, who lived in 400 BCE, would have seen a temple something like this. Modern yoga, because yoga has always been there for the past 15,000 years or even before that. And this is a Gupta period temple that we have tried to create a simplistic animation that would see even more realistic. Gupta periods are like 3rd century, 4th century, where you would know the Chandragupta Vikramaditya and his father Samudragupta, his grandfather Chandragupta, who sent out the Huns from India. And this is another Mauryan temple, a Buddhist temple. You can see the steps and the typical Mauryan. This is called a Gavaksha, a horse eye magnet, or a cow's eye magnet, cow's eye window, I'm sorry. So the houses, these are all our inspirations from a French artist. You look at the domed and the vaulted ceiling and the multi-story buildings. And these are from Ajanta paintings. This is from the Ajanta Visitor Center. We have many architectural scapes. So we used all of that, and we took the ground plan layout of individual buildings from textbooks like this. We created the individual buildings. This is an isometric projection of a middle-class Indian house with a courtyard. Courtyards are called as the shalas, and this is called a griha. A griha in ancient in Sanskrit means that which would attract. So griha means that would attract people for its love and peace and tranquility. So this is a cross-sectional view of the same griha, where the Nagarika, the citizen of the city, would have his public affairs here and would have his private affairs with his family and the kitchen and everything that would deal here. And we have more residential buildings. These are from Sanchi. You look at the balconies. This is more like a ground floor. And this is one of our Shilpa Shastra texts that we are using. It's called Manasara. This is from 7th, 8th century or even more earlier. So we are using these texts for proportions. So what we are creating are like as historically accurate as possible. Nobody would have ever seen an ancient Indian building, but this is the first of its kind. You cannot find these things in the research books. So these are all we are creating. We are planning to publish this in both in the architectural journals and also in the history journals. And you see the rafter ceilings for to have the vaulted dome, and you have also the kalashas. So Megasthenes is describing King Ashoka's, Chandragupta Maurya's palace is something that is filled with innumerable number of kalashas in the ceilings. A 5-story building would have looked at something like this. Look at those grandeur. A 13-story building in 500 BCE or even before that would have looked at something like this. Even in the US, it took more than 100 years to convert their steel, their concrete-based multi-story buildings to just reinforced steel-based buildings. But we have used similar, although rudimentary, but still they have achieved what they wanted. The ground floors would have used for the owners of the building, and the upper stories would have would have given for renting. Probably the upper stories would have constructed in wood, so that's given for renting. But what they have told in the visitors' literature, like Pliny and other people who have looked at India, is just the same as what we find in our journals, like Kalidasa and other texts which are describing those great buildings. And the stadium, and this
Cibi, if you don't mind, you need to hurry up a bit.
Yeah, I'm done with it. So the hospitals, we are still working on it. This is from internet. And we have a lot of challenges, the availability of books and archaeological materials. What we have about India is something like this, from Greece is something like this. Yeah. And we are aiming to achieve something like this. This is what I could find for Rome. We are trying to do the same thing for India, the harbors and the public buildings and many references. Ancient education, this is just a screenshot of what I have. Indian colonies and so on. Yeah, my thanks to Sadhguru and Jebbiana, my acharyas and my team. That's Shiva sculpture, Shiva and Parvati from 7th century Bengal. Such is the continuity of Indian civilization. Thank you. And this graph I want to show you, if we cannot fix Indian civilization, we have less than 31 years left. This graph is from the Center for Policy Studies, and the percentage of Indian civilization, the stakeholders of Indian civilization is going down, and the percentage of other people who don't share the same spirit of Indian civilization is going up, and we have less than 31 years left. So this is why this hurry. This is what that made me to get into this history and bring the glory to our children so that they don't go away from this and they would be the light of humanity, not just for India. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cibi, one comment I wanted to make.
Yes, sir.
There is no doubt that our own Indians need to know about India's history.
Mm-hmm.
Students, boys and girls, when they come out of schools and colleges, they come out with an impression that the entire civilization of the world has descended upon India from the West.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One very simple thing that you mentioned, it caught my attention because I am a steel person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
For
of
example,
course.
iron was discovered in India in a place which is just 150 kilometers from Bangalore.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
A place called Tiruvannamalai, but nobody knows.
Right. Right.
Everybody thinks iron was made somewhere else, and the metallurgy books and the scientific books are all with descriptions of that place.
Right.
So there is a need to create pride in Indians about our own historic past.
True, true.
I hope your work aims at that.
Yes, sir. I'm working towards that too. Yes, that's my aim. That's my inspiration to do that.
It's good that you're focusing on a lot of details also, like the streets and the houses and clothing that you showed quite beautifully. I think one of the problems, perhaps, at least from what I've read, is that in older Indian cities, most of the houses were made of wood. And like, for example, cities like Pataliputra and all were totally destroyed because most of it was all wood based. So were very much more easily destroyed compared to many of the other civilizations.
Right.
So although perhaps we had a lot of grand cities, because of the material used, they probably didn't survive very long.
True,
so yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you have any input about that? I mean,
sure.
or do you think in some other way?
Okay, so no, it's a good question. There are different.
Can you stop the screen sharing? Then we can see
sure.
each other. Thanks.
Thank you so much, all.
Yeah, that's great.
So there are scholars who have difference of opinions regarding that. I went into detail about this wood building thing. There are two answers for this. So one is it was indeed wood buildings, and why wood was chosen? Because Pataliputra was standing at the confluence of two rivers, the Ganga and Son river, in the Gangetic plains. So normally it was very usual for these rivers to get flooded and to erode city. At least the river would go into it, and so it was always very less damaging if it is a wooden construction, because the wood would float and then the people don't get hurt. And the other thing is what the visitors from across the Indian borders have seen, those wooden things are only for the upper stories and not for the lower ones. Let's say if the buildings are 7 stories, at least the 4 stories have been constructed with bricks or with mud, from the increasing stability. Probably the lowest story would be filled with columns and columns of stone, and then you have bricks and then mud. The upper stories would have been built with bricks. But why don't we see any Indian cities today? Because unlike the West, which went into more than 1,000 years of the so-called Dark Age or the Middle Ages, India had always continuity in the civilization. Dynasty after dynasty, the Rajas after our Rajas had come. The trademark of Indian civilization is city building. Unfortunately, we have forgotten that. But wherever the old cities have been there, the new cities have always been built upon the existing old cities, and they use the materials, they reuse the materials, and so we don't really see the old cities. But still, if we put if we invest more into the archaeology, if the present government could do it, maybe we can still see more of the ancient cities.
Yeah.
Cibi, I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm quite fascinated by the work you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to go back to your original objective of taking this to young people so that they understand this history.
Yeah.
And while I know the power of a visual is 1,000 times the power of the word, but in a subject where I'm completely unaware of anything, what is the extent of storytelling or textual support you will provide to an album of fascinating pictures? I'm very keen to see the form of that.
So it's more like my inspiration is this was Bond Publications, what they have done for the Greek and Rome. So they have like 70 to 80% of
visual
pictures. You see, so whatever that is put in the meme, it's reaching more people. So that's the aim. I can write books after books that nobody would be reading.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, but Cibi,
yes,
the point raised by Mr. Prashad is a very valid one.
Right. Okay.
The way children learn is the way that we need to feed them to learn.
Yeah. Right.
We go in opposition to that, then they will not look at it and they will not spend time.
Okay.
Children have a way of receiving information. You must tailor your product to suit that recipient.
Right.
Which is in cartoons and things like that. For example, we have very little cartoons in India.
True.
About the Indian history. We simply don't have.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when we look at producing books of that nature, which teaches Indian students about Indian history.
Right.
Because we got such fantastic things in India.
True.
Which is why I am, for example, I insist that in a business management course, history is part of the curriculum, which is very important.
Right. True, true. Yeah, the goal is to make it into nice animations and virtual realities and 3Ds and so on. I'm all to do it. So the first step is illustrations, and then beyond, even to make some cartoons, we still need an illustration. So
yeah,
that's
okay. One last question, Ravi.
Yes.
Cibi, not a question really. Apart from the content of what you shared, what I really like about this presentation was you not only had a thought, an area of work which fascinated you and felt the need to do that, something needs to be done here. Most importantly, you took the step of doing something about it.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And that to me is the point where things start changing, right?
True, sir.
So well done. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cibi.
I want to add one line of my experience here.
Yeah.
In the area of work that you're doing, the temptation to get into spirituality, religion will be very, very strong. And my experience has been that history, facts, narrations, impressing the future is best done by itself and without getting the other. There will be contrary views that things have to be holistic.
Sure.
But the minute things like religion get in, I think I have experienced a number of issues. I just thought I'd share that.
Sure. I am already in note of this. And then, so what I'm presenting is extremely unbiased and what is what kind of, if it's temple, just the architecture and Jains and everything, we don't have to, because this is addressed to the 6th to 9th grade children. This is a crowdfunded project that I'm running. So this is addressed at, the young adults and the middle grade children. So when it comes to the middle, in the invasion period and so on, I am planning to take extreme care of this. This is going through a filtering of many scholars, Dr. Chitra Madhavan and Professor Michel Danino and other such people who are very esteemed scholars in this field. So only after their approval and mentoring, I'm planning to release all of these things. So I hope it would be unbiased.
Okay, thank you, Cibi. Thank you very much for sharing this excellent work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
And I hope you go to greater success and that the whole illustrated history comes true. Thank you very much. And I think we'll need to move on to our next talk. All of you are welcome to continue with us. If you'd like to hear our next talk by Sujaya, she's going to talk. So Sujaya, you're ready? Yeah. You're muted.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm ready, but do we have the time? Because I think it's 7:20.
Yeah, 7:24. How long is your?
I've not timed it, but I think it would be 20 minutes.
Right. I think, can we do it next time then?
Can we do it next time then?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Then I guess we can spend a few more minutes. Any more questions to Cibi then? We can wrap up with that. Anybody has any other questions? Thank you, Sujaya. We'll do it next time then with your talk. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments about Cibi's work?
I had a comment. The history of India and across different cultures within India, as I read it and grew it not from my textbooks, but this comic series called Amar Chitra Katha. Amar Chitra Katha was a big source of knowing India's history across states, across cultures. For somebody like me who grew up in 70s and 80s, especially not from my home state, from another state where I grew up, it is difficult to know what is happening or what has happened in different places.
Right.
And I don't think anything more than Amar Chitra Katha is available in illustration format in India.
Right.
At least in those days it wasn't, and it was in print. And today's kids don't read print, so I'm a bit amused, intrigued on how they would get to know all that we read. And we would, buy and share that Ramachitrapata comics snow around the colony.
Right. So what I've observed in Germany is that, there are still children and even adults. Wherever I see, there are always people with books, and illustrated books, nicely made books are always top sellers. People all the time grabbing, it's like 30 euros, 40 euros, and parents just buying 4 or 5 books at a stretch and then giving it to their children. So I think, in my opinion, like if we could make it a bit of affordable and also spread this culture of reading. So that's why the reduced text and more illustrations as of now. And my aim is also to reach to the NRI kids where they are deviating away from the Indian traditions. So I'm hoping to bring this reading culture back and maybe later into animations. And
one is books. Yeah, Sujaya, you wanted to ask something.
No, if you're saying something you completed, then I can.
No, it's for you.
No, what I wanted to say is that I don't really believe that children are reading less now. I still think they are reading a lot. There are a lot of readers all over. But one thing we always talk about Indians not being proud of our culture. I think a lot of it has to do with parents and the society and our education system. Because I think we tend to give a lot more importance to science, and we encourage our children to do a lot better in science, and somehow in the languages and in history and the social sciences, it doesn't really matter if your child is not so interested. And even when parents influence their children about career, it is always medicine, it is engineering, and then management, and then perhaps a CA, and then IAS. One friend of mine was talking about why should Max Muller write about India? He's a foreigner, and he would write prejudicially. But really speaking, foreigners have done a lot. Let us remember that it was Cunningham and Prinsep and people like that who, along with British, they were actually political servants and army people. Cunningham was an army person. They worked together, they spent their own money, and it is through them that we learned that the Buddha was an Indian. Otherwise, with those Kushan sculptures, people wondered whether he was Greek. And then with some of the, flatter noses, people wondered whether he was from an African country. But I think a lot lies with parents, with society. Jobs in language and in the social studies must become more remunerative. And if they become more remunerative, then people will get into it. The more intelligent ones will get into it, and of course choose this as a discipline of study. So it's kind of a wheel, wheel. And things I was thinking is like whatever you do, to include children and make them curious about our past, a lot of things can be interactive. Like in the UK, instead of telling you this is part of a ship, what they do is they have pieces.
Right.
And then they tell you to, like a jigsaw puzzle, to put it together. So children are excited.
Yeah.
They can do something on their own. Rather than have something, spoken down to them. I mean, that's
true. No, I'm completely in line with what you have said, G. Yeah. So the Heritage Museum that I'm dreaming of is completely for children, where they would come and be inspired and look at all about the ancient Indian mechanical engineering advancements and civil engineering and so on, so that their life should just get transformed by spending a day there.
Sujay, if I may make a comment on what you said.
Yeah.
things are changing. You know, if you look at the new education policy, which was released by the government of India a few weeks ago, it lays a lot of emphasis on liberal arts and liberal education. So places like IITs and engineering colleges, through which I have been through, are now beginning to introduce, for example, history is going to become a compulsory subject in IITs. Humanities is going to become a compulsory subject in IITs. So there is a realization that fine arts and culture, etc., all add up to a person's total makeup, if I may use the word.
Right.
So that bit is changing a little bit in India also.
So even for technology companies like us, it has changed a lot, sir. Of the 15,000 people, youngsters or students that we had recruited last year, more than 2,500 came from liberal arts background.
Yeah, I know.
Unlike what many of you think, that it is from a computer science background. I mean, the majority.
In fact, I would say that making something compulsory is the wrong way to approach it. I would, in fact, say that you should be more flexible. In fact, you should be easily able to study English literature and at the same time do computer science. Right. If you have that kind of flexibility, then you are more likely. Just by making something compulsory for an engineering student, it's not going to increase arts.
No. Shibu, that's not the way. Shibu. In fact, the new engineering policy, NEP it is called, is so flexible. You can actually be a graduate. You can be a graduate in mechanical engineering and simultaneously a graduate in arts, liberal arts, or music, and it allows that.
Anyway, I think we have to put an end to our discussion. But on a last note, I would just like to say that last slide, I don't completely agree with the thought that we are dipping down in one way by one group of people or thing, because ultimately what we are talking about is a very small piece of history. If you look at the millennia, and this cycle of things going up and down has been going on for centuries.
Okay.
So I don't think Indian civilization is going to disappear like this so easily. Okay. So these things will keep going up and down, and we will continue to have things getting better later.
Right. Okay. Okay, sir.
May I share a slide?
Please, yeah, sure. Last, let's close after that.
The last word.
Yeah, as usual. Just a counterpoint to that slide that Cibi showed. This is from the Pew Research Center. It's a research society in Washington, D.C. It's a non-profit organization. So it's not actually an Indian source, but it says it's the percentage, it's for India only. They've looked at the population censuses in India, and this is their projection. So maybe, we don't have to worry so much.
Okay.
I just wanted to show that.
Okay, sure.
Can you?
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody.
Good
night.
Thank you, Cibi.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Cibi.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot. Yes.
Thank you, Cibi.
Yeah, Cibi Cherian, thank you very much.
Jebi's gone, I think. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.